Soil solarization is an excellent method for reducing some weed seeds and soil-borne diseases. And what exactly is solarizing? Well, it involves leaving a clear plastic tarp on the soil surface for 4 to 6 weeks during the hottest part of the year. Now, it works great when you're in a warm growing area, but if you live in a foggy or low light or low temperature area, there are options for you as well to kill weed seeds and nematodes and maybe even verticillium wilt, which are all pathogens that are adversely affected when you solarize the soil. And you may even have success removing Bermuda grass with soil solarization if you live in an area where Bermuda grass is more of a weed than a turf. We're talking with Steve Zion of Living Resources Company. He's a pedologist, 45 years in the soils business. Steve, how long have you known about soil solarization?
Oh, boy, I don't know. My guess is 20, 30 years. The folks that actually did the research are just down the road at UC Davis, and they did the research on it. They had a student organic farm, and they were looking for alternatives to the fumigants that the farmers use in crops like strawberries, and they found that you can use this clear plastic, and if you do it right, it will actually basically act like a greenhouse. If you have a greenhouse out there this time of year, and you go out in the greenhouse, if it's 100 degrees outside, it's probably about 180 in the greenhouse if you don't have it cooled or vented. It basically cooks the soil. They call it solarization because it's not quite sterilization, but it gets in, kind of in that direction. For example, if you do it properly, you're going to get your soil to really, really heat up. At a depth of 2 inches, it can get anywhere from 108 to 140 degrees. And what you really want to do if you're really trying to manage weeds and diseases and insect pests, your goal is to maintain the soil temperature for pretty much close to 6 to 8 weeks at anywhere from 110 to 125 degrees. And you can actually determine whether that's happening because you're going to be using clear plastic. You can get a soil thermometer and put that soil thermometer down in there, and usually the probes are about 6 inches long, and it'll have a little dial on the top, and you can go out there and see how warm that soil is getting.
So obviously the best time of year to do soil solarization is during the summer, the months of June, July, and August, for much of the country. Not all the country, but for much of the country. And
for our country, the United States of America. If you live in the southern hemisphere, it's not going to work so well.
Well, okay.
It has to be in the heat of the summer,
right?
Starting roughly a month before the summer solstice.
In this time frame where daytime highs may be in the 80s or 90s, it is remarkable that soil temperatures can get up to 140. But the key, as you pointed out, and it bears repeating, the key is to be using clear plastic.
Very much clear plastic, and the thinner the better. Actually, what you want, if you can deal with it and have it be successful, is 1 mil thick clear plastic, and you want it to be as clear as possible. If it's kind of smoky or cloudy, that's going to cut down the light transmission through the plastic. The issue with the 1 mil plastic, if it's a windy area or you've got critters like cats and dogs that might be walking on it, it's not going to probably hold up. And if you want to do it for more than 6 or 8 weeks, the sun will probably start breaking that plastic down. And so then you're going to want something thicker. Like if you're in a windy area, 1.5 to 2 mils thick would be probably more advisable.
And if you go to a big box store like Home Depot or Lowe's and you go to the paint aisle, they usually have rolls of plastic for painters that they put down on carpets. And that is enough to solarize your yard many times over because it's usually fairly big rolls. And like you mentioned, if the wind does rip it, well, it's not that difficult to replace it with another piece.
Well, a lot of times, if you can replace it with a little piece, but you want to go out there probably every day, especially if you're in a windy area, or there's skunks or raccoons or any kind of critter that could be walking on there. because even a small little hole you'll lose heat from that. And so you got to go out there and monitor it on a regular basis. If you find like your cat walked over it and didn't like to do that and put her claws through it, if it's just a small little area, you can get just like duct tape or something, plug those holes.
All right, so we're going to be killing weeds. We're going to be killing nematodes. We might even be able to thwart verticillium wilt if it's in your soil. And let's go step by step through the whole soil solarization process. So we're going to be doing this at the hottest time of the year, so June, July, August. It'll be about a 4 to 6 week process. I like to say 6 to 8 weeks.
Okay,
all right.
The longer you've got it cooking, the better chances of you killing the nasties.
The first thing I would think you would have to do is clear the area. If it's a lawn that you want to convert to a garden area, you'd want to mow it as short as possible. If it's a weedy, rocky area, you'd want to at least weed whack the weeds back to soil level and remove the rocks, rake off the rocks, so you have a fairly smooth surface.
Yeah, you want the area to be flat, and you want to basically remove as much vegetation as possible. And the soil should be flat, because when you lay that plastic down, you really don't want any air pockets. You want that plastic to basically hug the soil.
And one way to get it to hug the soil is in that process while you're leveling the soil and getting all the weeds knocked down or the lawn knocked down is to dig a trench along the outer perimeter. It doesn't have to be that deep of a trench, just a few inches, but that's where you can anchor down that clear plastic with bricks or rocks.
Yeah, actually, I like to lay the plastic down, and then I know where that trench should be.
Okay.
But you can measure it. You know how big a piece of sheeting that you have. But yeah, you want to dig a trench and then bury the edges so that it forms a tight seal. But before you put the plastic down,
yes. What do you do before you put the plastic?
You have to realize that what actually transmits the heat through the soil is moisture. And so you need to irrigate that area really, really well. And in this case, drip systems might not work very well because you want that moisture to be starting at the soil surface. So you want to water that area typically from above the ground. And then you need to use a soil probe or some sort of device to make sure that water goes down 18 inches, because you want that heat to move down 18 inches. If you've only got that water going down 4 inches, that's all the soil solarization you're going to get is 4 inches.
So this is going to be a process that might take a few days, because you're going to be cycling the water on and off just to avoid runoff.
Yes.
And basically, like you say, what you're trying to do is get that water as deep as possible. So you might plan on spending at least a couple of days running that sprinkler in order to get the soil moisture to percolate downward.
Yeah, and at this time of year, you really, normally I just tell people don't water at night. But, with it being so hot, watering in the evening, you're not worried about diseases of foliage because you're going to be killing the foliage anyway. You won't need to use quite so much water if you do it during the evening or early morning hours when you're going to lose less to evaporation.
And I imagine, too, that right before you lay down that clear plastic, you probably should just wet the soil again.
Yeah, that would be advisable.
And again, what this moisture is doing is helping move that heat downward.
Yeah. Dry soil, the water, the heat's not going to move through it. You're basically heating the moisture in the soil, and if you can get it, if you can get that soil up to 110 to 125 degrees for a long period of time, for those 6 to 8 weeks, you're going to be able to kill a lot of the weed seeds and the disease spores and insect eggs. And another thing that's kind of cool is that it also makes some of those pests that might not be killed, it weakens them to the point where they're going to be more susceptible to biological controls.
What about the beneficial soil organisms? Are they adversely affected by soil solarization?
Some of them are, but in some cases they can move out of the area. Worms, for example, But very, very quickly, they will, because the surrounding area is not affected, the area farther down is not affected. So tests have shown that the beneficial critters move back in very, very quickly. You can also, to improve that, add things when you're done, top dress with things like organic fertilizers that have microbes. There are products that you can buy that have microbes. Probably two of the better things are good quality compost and my personal favorite, worm castings. Worm castings that have all sorts of organisms. Now, the key here, though, is when you're done and you've removed that plastic, do not till that soil.
Don't rototill the soil.
Because, the soil, especially, the higher you are in the soil profile, if you're only like 2 inches deep, 3 inches deep, you've probably killed just about everything there. But the farther you go down, the better the chances are that weed seeds, disease spores, and insect eggs have survived. And so tilling them would bring those critters that have survived up to the top. So when you're adding the worm castings or the compost, just put it right on top. And typically what happens is after you've tarped this area for 6 to 8 weeks, that soil will really be nice and loose and friable.
Where do the earthworms go during all this?
They'll go to the surrounding area. They'll go farther down.
I am very impressed about how it does such a fine job on weed seeds, but we shouldn't shortchange the fact that solarization controls so many soil-borne fungal and bacterial problems, including verticillium wilt, fusarium wilt, phytophthora, southern blight, damping off, crown gall, tomato canker, potato scab, and many others.
Yeah, I mean, it works really, really well. Like I said, UC, when they did the research, they were looking for alternatives to, the fumigants. Some of the fumigants that the farmers used on a regular basis were being outlawed because they were so dangerous and so toxic. And they found that this really does a wonderful job. They get... they do a good job on controlling nematodes as well. If you've ever had a plant that didn't perform well, in particular in your vegetable garden, and like tomatoes, for example, and your tomato's not doing well, you pull it up, and normally I don't tell people to pull the roots out because those roots will decompose and add organic matter. But if the plant's not doing well, there might be something wrong with the roots, and if you pull those roots out, you might see little nodules. And that's fine to see little nodules on your peas and beans because those are beneficial bacteria providing nitrogen to your plant. But on tomatoes, those are called nematodes, and they damage the plant roots, and that's one of the causes for your plant not surviving. And this soil solarization will control the bad nematodes as well.
Now, we mentioned this is best in warm areas. So if you live in an area where the air temperature is in the upper 80s, 90s, or higher, such as the Central Valley of California, the deserts, or other inland areas of California, or wherever you may happen to be, summertime is the best time to do this. If you live in the cooler coastal areas of many parts of California, they have what they call the San Francisco summer, which is usually the month of September, where it's not so much it gets hot, but at least it's not foggy. And that would be their best opportunity along the coast to try solarization.
Yeah, I mean, the air temperature is not quite so critical as the sun being high. So most of the sunlight goes right in through the plastic instead of bouncing off, and that it be sunny.
Now, one thing I did not know, and I'd be willing to try it sometime, is solarizing soil in containers. That it's been shown to be effective for disinfesting small amounts of moist containerized soil, such as in cold frames. But you could do it in buckets, too.
Yes. I mean, the buckets, it would probably work as well, yeah. I'm thinking. And, I think the raised beds, I think it would work really well. Again, you would want to dig a trench around the outside of your raised bed soil so that you can bury that into the edges so that you cover the entire area, and just break it level first and give it some good irrigation, and it'll do the job.
All right. Soil solarization works in many, many climates. Could you use soil solarization in your home state of Wisconsin?
I think so, because we have a lot of, or we had when I lived there, and I assume the climate's relatively similar. Most of the days are partly cloudy, and so there's a cloud here, a cloud there, but there's sun in between. It's not like the winters here where the whole sky is gray. And yeah, it would work. I think it would work well in most areas where there is sun.
And again, it's in the summertime, and again,
Yep.
It's with clear plastic.
Yes.
Why doesn't black plastic work?
Black plastic, well, it's not going to transmit the heat. The sunlight can't get through the black plastic. But I found, and I have used it for years, excluding light. And you can use tarps, you can use black plastic, anything that's going to exclude light. It will not sterilize or solarize the soil, but it will kill any existing vegetation. It's not going to do the weed seeds or the disease spores or the insect eggs. But if you put a cover that will exclude the light, it will remove the existing vegetation. And then what I typically suggest is that after that's done, you can then water the area, let the weed seeds that are there grow, and then control them either with a garden hoe or a flame weeder or something like that. And do that a couple times, and then you will basically have a weed-free bed to put in your garden. And you can do that any time of the year.
And how long would you leave that black plastic on to do that?
Typically a month to 2 months. The longer the better. But a couple of months is more than sufficient. When I lived back in Wisconsin, I moved around a lot, and in many cases, it was not during the heat of the summer. And at that point, we didn't know of soil solarization, and so that's what I did. Often I said, to the landlord, "Well, I'm going to be moving here in a month or two. I would like to have a garden. Is that acceptable?" And then if they said yes, I said, "Can I come out now, a month or two before I move in, and cover with black plastic or some sort of tarp to exclude the light?" And then by the time I moved in, it was ready to plant. Worked very well.
Did he call you a damn hippie under his breath as you walked away?
Well, he was a hippie too, so.
All right. It all worked out.
I lived in those kind of neighborhoods.
All right. Soil solarization for gardens and landscapes. It works. It's a non-chemical method for controlling soil-borne pests using high temperatures produced by capturing radiant energy from the sun in the summertime with water and clear plastic. Steve Zion, Living Resources Company, 45 years, soils expert. Thanks for heating up the soil for us today.
It was fun. Thanks, Fred.